Hi, I'm Nicole Ferraro, and this is The Divide, a podcast from Light Reading exploring the ongoing digital divide, why and where it still exists, and what needs to be done to get people everywhere connected to reliable, high-speed internet. Today, I'm joined by Joshua Edmonds, CEO of DigitalC, a nonprofit community service provider in the city of Cleveland. We discuss the connectivity and access challenges that led to DigitalC's launch nearly a decade ago, and how the service provider has been able to grow and sustain itself over time. We also discuss DigitalC's $20 million contract with the city of Cleveland and its progress with meeting subscriber goals, future plans for growth, and more. All right, Joshua, welcome to the podcast. So nice to meet you officially. How's it going today?
It's great to meet you as well. And it's beautiful. It's a sunny day in Cleveland, and we cannot complain for those because we don't get a lot of those.
Yeah, you know what? Where I sit here in New York City in Manhattan, we're having the same experience after a very windy and cold Sunday. So I'm feeling good as well. So I have been following the work of DigitalC for a while, so I'm super excited to get to talk with you today. But before we dive into all the details, why don't you just introduce yourself and your role at DigitalC and how long you've been with the organization?
Absolutely. So Joshua Edmonds, I'm the Chief Executive Officer at DigitalC. I've been at DigitalC since November of 2022. So I guess, it's approaching 3 years at the end of this year, and DigitalC is approaching its 10th year in July.
Yes. Okay. So exciting. So let's talk about those 10 years and what came before a little bit too. DigitalC, as you mentioned, came about roughly almost 10 years ago. But what was the digital divide like in Cleveland prior to that? What was the problem that DigitalC really set out to solve? And what have historically the main challenges been to access and adoption in the region?
So in 2014, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, in partnership with Connector Community, Bill Callahan really unearthed some, I would say, some trajectory-setting information related to the American Community Survey, which had Cleveland ranked as the least connected big city in America. Now, by big city at that point, they were just saying of cities with 100,000, residents or more. But least connected, it was us in Detroit battling back and forth, and it really materialized with respect, and we say at least connected then, at least, was residents not having access to high-speed internet. So it was compounded in the sense that they might have had internet, but it wasn't at broadband speeds at the time, for which at that time it was 25 megabits download, 3 up. So they didn't either have that or they just couldn't afford it. And so either way, both of those problems essentially were the foundation for the digital divide, which at that time, DigitalC was really concentrated on addressing the leading question, which was how do we connect the unconnected? And DigitalC's initial start was through the digital literacy and skilling training. And so it's great that we have had almost a decade of training residents in the city, but it started with that, and then it grew into home internet access that we see today, with a few pit stops along the way. I would say the backdrop when we start describing the issue, Cleveland at the same time, while the infrastructure was questionable in a lot of these neighborhoods, in addition to that, the social economic status of a lot of people. I mean, and to this day, we're still dealing with that, where, a third and sometimes over a third, depending on the year and conditions of our residents, are living in poverty here. And that has a cascading effect. And obviously, when you add technology into the mix, we've now created the unfortunate perfect storm of the digital divide in Cleveland.
Absolutely. Okay, so you mentioned it started out as digital literacy, skills training, and such, and then moved into delivering internet service. My understanding is you operate as a nonprofit and a community ISP. So talk to me a little bit about how you moved into delivering internet service. I assume that looked pretty scrappy at the beginning for you guys. No.
Yeah, it's been scrappy. There's still some scrappy stuff, and we're figuring out. But no, so we started with the training, and at that time it was like, as they were doing the training, it's like, look, guys, we could do a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Not saying that we have to do everything. We could do a little bit more. So then it moved into providing Wi-Fi within public spaces, specifically in partnership with the housing authority, because at that same time, that's when President Obama had rolled out Connect Home. And so
Hmm.
Connect Home obviously focused on lifting up residents in public housing and the digital inequities found within there. And so that's where that started. DigitalC is getting access to these rooftops of these public housing estates in the city. And it's like these rooftops, well, we could do a little bit more. These now become base stations. And so was able to pilot. And at that time, DigitalC had selected Ciclu and Nokia to build out the first iteration of the network of pilots. And at that time, we were using Ciclu and Nokia, and that was primarily the CBRS that we were able to then pilot in certain neighborhoods. And so we were able to get, I would say, a varying degree of speeds. And a lot of that had to just do with the significant tree canopy that Cleveland has. I mean, we take pride in being the forest city, and I didn't understand what that truly meant until now we built another network. And I'm like, oh. So we see at the same time the evolution of wireless technology from the CBRS that had some difficulty penetrating. Oh, actually, I was to say great difficulty penetrating a lot of the tree canopy in the neighborhoods in Cleveland, to now having something that, we cover over 100,000 homes in this city, and not 9 out of 10 residents recommend this service, and it's great to be in that position right now.
That's major. So I would love to go year by year with you because I find this so interesting, but we have to keep it moving. So I'm going to jump up to 2023, which is when DigitalC signed its agreement with the city, which I believe actually provided you with some funding, right? And that funding, I think, comes from the American Rescue Plan. Is that correct?
That is correct. Now,
Okay. So, oh, go ahead.
go ahead. So I would say the only
Yeah.
one caveat I would say is like, so it was September
Mhm.
2023 is when we got the actual go ahead from the contract to, like, that we got the contract. City
Okay.
council hits the gavel and we're good. January 2024 is when we start, meaning we had a ramp up time from September to January to
Gotcha.
essentially get the team, get the contracts, get everybody in place to execute. And our team internally moved very, very, very fast.
Yeah, no question. So we'll get into a little bit more of those specifics, but back to what the actual agreement with the city was intended to enable for you. Tell me a bit more about that. What was the agreement in place for? What did it mean for you guys in terms of what you were able to do with those funds in place, and what are the expectations of the city from you in return?
I tell people every day that we move forward, we get a day further away from the pandemic.
Hmm.
And the funding, the American Rescue Plan funding, a lot of cities were instructed to use their funding for digital equity
Hmm.
purposes. And so, there were plans to build networks, there were plans to provide training throughout. And then as we got further away from the pandemic, cities began shifting their priorities and then not allocating initially in the thing that they wanted to do. That's a trend that's seen all across America. And I have to give credit for Cleveland for sticking with the plan and saying that we are going to use our $20 million of our American Rescue Plan money, and we're going to deploy funding to bridge this digital divide. And so that then was matched with 10 million from the state of Ohio, another 20 million from the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, and then a $3 million earmark. And what that stipulated was, one, in 18 months from January 2024 to June of 2025, we would build an entire network that would cover 99.9% of the residential properties in the city. So that's first one was coverage. The second one is we would also connect 23,500 households to internet that at $18 a month at 100 speed symmetrical. And that was going to be done in a 4-year window. And then the last one is we're going to train 50,000 residents in the city. And they all had to be 50,000 unique residents, no repeats, within 4 years as well. And so that is that's the timeline. That's what everyone's working on at DigitalC for the next
Yeah.
until the end of 2027.
Okay, so that's, I mean, That's so interesting for multiple reasons. One, just a quick aside, I have to assume that if you guys are offering 100 symmetrical service at $18 a month, that perhaps the local incumbents are not happy with you. Have you had any pushback?
Oh, have we had pushback? Oh man, I honestly I didn't know that $18 100 would do that. I figured that over like, all right, they might not like it a little bit, but I mean, they it's oil and water. They
Oh my.
hate it.
Yeah. So, what does that look like for you? Is that a lot of, fighting with the incumbents, getting lawyers involved?
It's there used to be a phrase that was said in like 20, I would say on before pandemic mainly, but even a little bit during the beginning of the pandemic. And there was a phrase that a lot of the digital equity advocates would say was like, you don't want to make the internet providers mad, you don't want to upset them, you don't want to. And now that we're doing it, I'm like, oh, okay. One, I see why they say that. And then two, it's like it forces us in this really unique position because like one, we don't want to just fight anyone because like compared to them, we're a canoe. Like they are these huge, massive battleships, and we're just like this canoe right next to them.
Yeah.
The thing is, that canoe, it works with respect to spending, but whenever you're in a local ecosystem, every one of these large internet providers, essentially every city is like their fiefdom. And so like when you're maybe broadly going at them, they might not really feel the impact, but locally it's like, we're closing in on 4,500 households since January of 2024. So that's a massive like spike in a
Yeah.
very short amount of time in a city that's not going to see any other telecom investment. So at this point, every install that we do, every customer that we acquire, well, either they've never had internet before or they're coming from someone else. And
Right.
so at this point, what we've been primarily seeing, it's been a lot of the threats of maybe, hey, you can't do that, that's wrong, and stuff to kind of try and intimidate us or shake us. And then they definitely have a very, very strong lobbying arm. I'll tell anyone who's going any type of community-based network, it's great that what you're doing might be innovative. You might be able to deliver results and people might love it. But if you do not invest properly in your lobbying game, they
Mhm.
will kill your story before you can even tell it. And on
Okay.
top
So,
of
yeah.
that's hard to build community that way.
Yeah, for sure. And so that means for an organization like DigitalC that operates as a nonprofit, you need the funding to sustain your network, but also funding to fight to be a network,
That's
right?
right. Yes.
Um,
Good.
no, okay, sorry. We had a little bit of a lag, so sorry if I cut you off there for a second. So, uh, in terms of your overall growth, you mentioned what, 4,500 households? Is that what you just said? And
Yeah,
since
yep, January 2024. We're closing in on that number right now. I think it's like 44 or something, but yeah, about 4,500. We'll have that probably by the end of this week.
Okay, so that's significant. But let's talk about the last year or so. I understand, last year you guys had to maybe sacrifice a little bit of your 20 million, I think, of your 20 million from the city because you weren't meeting subscriber goals. At least that's how that was reported. But your Q1 results from this year show that you're back on track. Talk to me a little bit about the what happened last year, the challenges that you guys have been facing along the way, and how things are looking right now given your Q1 results.
Yeah, so we've learned a lot. Honestly, like everyone says, "Oh, I could write a book." I'm like, no, no, no. We could write an anthology. At this point, I mean, we started in January 2024. We had to learn, bringing sites live. So going through the entire tower permitting process, construction process, certifying the power that's going to each one of our sites. And so that was one thing. The technology actually evolved on us because we were going to do almost 120 tower sites using our existing CBRS deployment strategy. And then in January, for folks who remember, the FCC greenlit the use of the 6 gigahertz spectrum. So
Hmm.
then that just completely changed everything in January. And then, we start working with Tirana a bit more. So like our vendors change. In addition to that, trying to predict customer demand, but they don't know who we are. Everyone's skeptical here locally because, of course, they are. And so there was just a combination of those other factors. And then, in Cleveland, we're not allowed to door knock as an organization, nonprofit or not. You're not allowed to door knock without a permit from Cleveland City Council. And so we had to get a permit from them. Now we're on the clock in January. We applied for this permit the summer of 2023. We didn't get the permit to actually knock on doors in the city until the fall of 2024. So the same council who took $1 million from us and said how we were essentially failures, that same council did not give us the ability to knock on doors. And it's not like we didn't reach out. We reached out several times, nothing happens. And so we're able to knock on doors, at the start of Q4. And from Q4 of last year to now, it's like, wow, you guys have had an incredible growth. I'm like, yeah, we're allowed to knock on doors now. The same body that, told us you can't do that didn't move to allow us to do that. And then they took $1 million from us.
Oh man. Okay, very interesting. So a bit unfair in terms of why that funding was taken from you, to say the least. But since you've been able to knock on doors, it sounds like you guys have skyrocketed in terms of your signups and such. I'm also wondering, did you guys benefit from the Affordable Connectivity Program ending in terms of customers coming over from some of the other providers in the region?
Absolutely. I mean, we look. I mean, I can be mad at one thing that happened that was unfair, but I
Right.
mean, there's some things that really fell in our lap, and I'm like, well, if this is gonna fall here, I guess we're gonna play it here.
Yeah, yeah,
So there's been a lot of customers who just like were like, "Oh, I'm even paying even less than I was even before," and I'm like, "Yes, yes, yes, yes."
Wow.
So the one thing that we have noticed though is some customers are having difficulty switching over to us from their current internet provider, and their current internet provider will even ask them, "So who you're going with?" And then obviously they'll say, "Well, Digital C," and then they'll have something smart to say like they don't get the speeds or it doesn't work or whatever it is. I mean, they've been trying their best to like stop the
Yeah.
flow, but ACP helped us significantly because we were per capita one of the highest enrolled cities in the
Right.
country. And so being able to consistently work through a pipeline that was already established through a lot of the community organizing organizations that we're already working with, that's helped us significantly. But I would say the number one factor for our success thus far has been word of mouth.
Hmm.
Neighbors just getting the service, they love it. They knock on their neighbor's door, then they tell so and so, then so and so. I mean, word of mouth is probably 80% of the reason why we have the success we do.
Yeah. Do you have people in the community for whom $18 is still too much money? Are there people that need fully free service? And is there anything that you guys are trying to do or able to do or aspiring to do to reach those populations?
So yes. So $18 works for, I would say a lot of people, but this economy is this economy right now.
Yeah.
And so what we find is one will proactively look for subsidies for residents. So we have several. One just ended. We had one with our hospital system here, Metro Health. So they were paying the internet bills for those in the surrounding community, and at the same time we were then signing them up for like their healthcare platform. So like that was one good exchange. In other cases, we'll have apartment buildings actually just pay for the internet for the residents. So they'll just roll it into the rent. If they're already unsubsidized, they'll do it that way. And Cleveland Clinic is also one of our obviously premier health systems here. They pay for access in a neighborhood. The probably the most prominent example would be our school district, who pays for the internet for every resident that we connect as part of the school district. And so
Okay.
we are consistently finding ways to even offset the charge of the 18, but it allows us to model out sustainability by us not providing it for free. And so that would be I would probably say the community-based network pro tip, which is like if you're able to exist between access to the resident and then obviously providing direct access on behalf of an aggregate organization, that seems to be modeling success for us, at least from a funding standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. I want to let you go in a minute or two here. So I'm going to roll into a few topics in together. Obviously, we're in a moment of uncertainty in a lot of ways. One of those things that are uncertain is what comes of the Digital Equity Act funding. I believe that is fully frozen at the moment. That's what the reporting suggests, at least. So what does all of this uncertainty around funding, federal funding, mean for an organization like yours? And what are, obviously you have this contract with the city, so you have set goals for a set period of time. What does that ramp up work look like? And what are your needs in order to support that work?
Well, I'll say to your first question, with all the uncertainty that's out there right now, what I love about uncertainty is the minute someone's certain in a room full of uncertainty, they really can stand out. And so I would say that our trajectory in front of us right now, I would like at least to lift up that Cleveland is a really good example of what happens when all these different stakeholders are able to work together, prioritize the thing that matters the most, and just be committed to that. And hopefully our smoke signal that we're raising serves as an example that folks on the federal side can look at and say, hey, maybe we should be investing in more community-based networks. Maybe we can get the most bang for our buck on a subscriber standpoint, but also from a training standpoint, as evidenced by what happened over at DigitalC. And so I would hope, that's my actual desire and goal, to be able to communicate our results in ways I believe there's replicable elements that America could greatly benefit from. The second part, from a ramp up standpoint, I mean, thankfully, we have been able to secure the necessary contractors. I mean, we contracted a lot of this work out. Internally, we have about 41 employees, but I would say the only thing that we maybe under anticipated, I shouldn't say the only thing, we underestimate a lot, but one of the major things was the workforce that was needed, specifically from the field install standpoint. Again, we're deploying a next generation fixed wireless network. Yeah. We're doing single family installs, going out there with ladders, climbing on top, installing the nodes to the homes, and doing the internal wiring. That's about an hour and a half to 2 hour job. And so if you're thinking about 4,500 that we've been able to amass during this time, it took a lot of workforce, a lot of training, on the job training. We don't have a telecom academy here locally, so we just had to figure a lot of this stuff out and hire locally, and not hire to the standard of where tech is, but hire to the standard of where people are, their mentality is, their character is, and we can teach the tech. And that's what we've been doing, hiring from the neighborhoods.
Excellent. Well, I'd love to talk to you for like 3 more hours, but I'm going to release you back to the people of Cleveland so that you can get all that wonderful work done. Thank you so much, Joshua. It was really fantastic to talk to you. I hope you'll come back and tell us about all of your success.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you again, Joshua, for joining me. Thank you as well to Pierre Landriau for editing this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Light Reading Podcast for more episodes of The Divide, as well as interviews and insights from the Light Reading team. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.